Hello, my name is Jesper Hellberg, I'm a level designer and this is the developer walkthrough of my Portal 2 map Refractive Anomaly. I will talk about the design process, workflow and the iteration through all the feedback I received during development. At the end of the video, I will present my final thoughts on how I could improve my map further. I started out in the Portal 2 in-game puzzle maker and played around with the items available and tested extensively until I created a puzzle I liked. I came up with an idea of basing the whole map around the laser beam and how to reflect the beam in different ways. I played a lot of community-made maps to get inspiration on how a puzzle should play and let me know how to spice things up. After I finished the first puzzle, I started tweaking the difficulty of the initial puzzle. This resulted in an easy first puzzle to get the player familiar with the basic elements and themes, after which I steadily increased the level of difficulty. When I felt that the whole map was good enough, I let some friends and classmates playtest the chamber. The playtesting yielded some very interesting, unintended solutions that sometimes broke or even skipped entire puzzle sections. After reviewing the feedback results, I started iterating and fleshing out areas that felt empty to improve the pacing. Then I let some more friends playtest and I patched up some more design flaws. Some of the alternate solutions that came up during playtesting felt cool and imaginative, so I found a way to work them into the puzzles. I wanted the solutions to feel satisfying for a player. After some more extensive playtesting, I finally got the result I wanted when everybody was playing the map as intended. I then exported the map from the in-game puzzle maker into Hammer. In Hammer, I changed all the textures to make the map more visually pleasing and interesting. I felt that I had a lot of time to spare, so I wanted to add some cool events, enhancing the experience. Having never scripted in Hammer before, I challenged myself to add some scripted events, like when the player solves a puzzle, the player is rewarded with a humorous comment from an in-game NPC, just like in a regional game.
Kate again. Now, I'll admit losing my body does have its drawbacks, but it's got its perks too. As a being of pure intellect, I've now got time to read the entire literary canon of the human race. Here I go. And I am done.
I also added autosave triggers for some sections in the map that I felt were too unforgiving. The player could respawn where they died to get right back into the action to prevent the frustration and distraction of replaying from the beginning. I even added an Easter egg, because I had so much fun scripting.
Hi down there.
After all the tweaking and scripting in Hammer, I posted it on Steam Workshop and I received a very positive reception from the Steam community. Some even posted their playthroughs of my map to YouTube. I was overwhelmed with the positive reception. Now I will go through some more in-depth playthrough on some of the puzzles and their iterations. This is the second puzzle in the chamber. The player needs to reflect the laser beam into the laser receivers using the redirection cube. There are 3 laser fields in the way, and each one of them will turn off depending on which receiver is activated. There are 2 approaches to this puzzle. One is to place the cube on the floor, while the cube is redirecting the laser beam into a receiver. Walk past the inactive laser field and then pick up the cube from the other side. Or, the player can hold the cube and walk past the laser field while the player is aligning the laser beam onto the receiver. 2 problems occurred during playtesting. One was the player could not see exactly the position of the laser fields when they deactivated them, so when they retrieved the cube from the other side, the player could die because they were too close to the laser field. My solution was to add a warning stripe on the floor to show the player where the laser field will be. The other problem was that if the player walks across holding the cube and misaligns the laser from the receiver halfway through, they get instantly killed. So my solution was to add a short delay on the reactivation of the laser fields. In the third puzzle, the player needs to place the redirection cube on the cube button. When the button is pressed, a laser beam will activate. The player then needs to place a portal at the right panel where the laser beam is hitting and a portal on the flip panel in the back. This will redirect the laser to a receiver behind the player. When the player turns around, she will see a hidden room with a button inside. When the button is pressed, a panel near the cube button will angle out, so the player now can place a portal on it to redirect the laser beam to the redirection cube and into the receiver near the cube button. One of the problems that could occur once inside the hidden room was if the player deactivated the laser beam. This would close the door leading to the hidden room and resulting in the player being stuck. And the only way to escape was to reset the level. My first solution was a hidden passage that opened up when the player first pressed the button inside the room. But that took some players out of the experience and only got them confused because they didn't know the reason for the extra walkway. So I made a trigger for it instead, so it only opens up if the player will deliberately get stuck, and rewarded the player with a humorous dialogue. This is how the Easter egg came to be. Here is the final puzzle in the chamber, and it was the most challenging one to balance. There are different approaches to solve this puzzle. The first thing the player sees is a laser field, blocking her way to the exit in front of her. To her right is a cube button that will disable the laser field, but is blocked with a fissure field that destroys the cube when in contact. There are two cubes to her left. One of them is in a glass cage above the ground. To get the cube inside the cage, the player has to place a portal above the tractor beam and a portal on the right wall. Then stand on the big red button on the ground under the cage. This will switch the polarity of the tractor beam, which will pull the cube from the cage. Once the player has obtained the cube, she can proceed to the aerial faith plate near the right wall to get launched into the air. While in the air, the player can place a portal on a white floor of the plateau with a big red button, previously unseen from the ground. By doing so, the player can reach and activate the button by placing a cube on it. When the button is pressed, one black panel will flip to white underneath the plateau, and another panel will shift into an angle. This allows the player to reach the cube button in the right corner where the player came from. She can either reach it by placing a portal on each panel that got activated by the button she just pressed. Use the aerial faith plate to get enough momentum to fly inside the cage. Or she can ride a tractor beam if she places a portal on the now angled panel. Once the cube button is pressed, the player can traverse through the inactive laser field. Here lies the final challenge. The player needs to redirect the laser beam into the receiver on the wall. To do this, the player needs to place a portal on the right wall near the ceiling and a portal above the tractor beam. Then placing a redirection cube either on the lift, aligning it so it's pointing at the direction of the receiver on the wall, or ride the tractor beam to align the cube. Then the player has to deactivate the light bridge that is blocking the cube by pressing a timer button next to it. The player then needs to place another cube on the big red button that switches the polarity of the tractor beam so the redirection cube floats in reverse and stops at the other side of the light bridge. After this task, the player is now rewarded with and may now walk through the exit. The first iteration of this puzzle was in a one big giant room. This led many players getting overwhelmed and confused about where to start the puzzle. I solved this by splitting up the room in half, redirecting the player's focus on the less complex puzzles first. There are still some issues in the current layout that I would like to address if future iterations were to occur. I think the overall complexity in the final room may be too overwhelming for some players. To guide those players in the right direction, I will place a tractor beam closer to the final room so it's more visible to the player. Also, I would like to make the other cube visible from the final room as well. This could be done by opening up the wall in front of the cube. It will be one way to give those players that aha moment we all strive for when solving puzzles. Nevertheless, I'm still happy with the end result, and I think I succeeded in creating a small single-player campaign instead of a single puzzle test chamber. This concludes my video. If you have any questions or would like to see my portfolio, please visit my website jesperhellberg.com. If you would like to play Refractive Anomaly, just click on the Steam Workshop link below this video. Thank you for watching.